When I started out on this weight loss journey, my BMI was 41, placing me in the morbidly obese category. Cut to last week and my BMI was 20.7, placing me well within the healthy range for an adult female who's 39 and 5'10". However, my weight loss journey with Mounjaro was relatively straightforward. My maintenance and no longer using Mounjaro, and we're approaching 3 months, has been anything but. And a couple of weeks ago, I got to the point where I felt like I couldn't maintain this lifestyle without using Mounjaro. And I'd gone online, done online consultations, and had the medication in my basket 3 times ready to purchase. Newsflash, we're a couple of weeks on from that. I didn't reorder Mounjaro and I'm doing okay. However, that led me and many of you to ask the question, with a BMI of 20.7, can you even get Mounjaro anymore? And so in this video, we're going to see whether I can or can't get Mounjaro with a BMI of 20.7. And in all honesty, some of the results are shocking. So I'm just going to preface this by saying I haven't directly mentioned any of the companies purely because I've gone back to ask further questions of the prescribers that agreed and didn't agree. And I'm also going to do a much more in-depth video. This is sort of just a surface level one. So if you want to see a more in-depth video on this, which I think will be really interesting, let me know. However, once I get responses from everybody, I'll do an update and post, or if no one wants to see that video or they do, I'll put all that information in. So I straight away went back to a prescriber that I had used previously, so already had a profile with them. Now, I didn't even do a full in-depth consultation. The minute that I put in my weight and height, so for context, I'm 39, I'm 5'10", female, and I weighed at this point 142 pounds, so BMI of 20.7. They came back very quickly and said, you're not eligible for this weight loss medication. We recommend speaking to your GP around safe ways to lose weight. I have emailed them subsequently to just say, look, actually this would be a maintenance dose. I don't need to lose weight. I haven't had a response. So then I went to another prescriber. Again, very quickly, they came back and said, we can't safely administer this medication. The only variation being that they said the reason for that was my BMI was 20.7 and therefore it wouldn't be safe. And again, signposted me to a medical practitioner to discuss safe ways to lose weight. I again went back and said, this isn't around losing weight. This is maintenance. I've only had a generic email back that says we aim to respond to you within 7 to 14 working days. So I thought that pretty much cemented it, that across the board, this is going to be no. That filled me with a little bit of dread, because as much as I didn't reorder and I don't intend to at the moment, if I needed to, if this got really out of hand, I've always been very transparent that I would use the medication again. But suddenly to be seeing no, that made me panic, because actually, what does that mean for many of us then that have used this medication, got to a healthy weight? For me, the first time in my adult life, got to a sustainable healthy weight. I've then tried to do it without the medication. I can't. Does that mean I have to put on weight to get back into an unhealthy BMI range to be able to use this medication? And then when I get to a lower BMI, will that mean that I can no longer use it anymore? And so that did fill me with dread. But then it also, I thought, well, actually, some of the worries I've had about this medication as someone that had an ED as a teenager, someone that has teenage daughters, is that it's so easily accessible, it could fall into the wrong hands. And so there was a part of me that was quite happy about that, which is why I want to do a deeper dive on this. So the next day I was undeterred, and I mean, at this point there are hundreds of prescribers on the market in the UK alone. Realistically, I don't have the budget or the time or the will at the moment to go through all of them, although I think that might be quite an interesting video. So I picked 5 prescribers I've not used before, that I don't have a profile with, legitimate ones. I did go on and Trustpilot, and I checked and I looked on YouTube for different prescribers people are using positively. Out of the 5, 4 came back and offered me the medication. Now, I don't have a profile with them. 2 of them recommended that I actually increase my dose to 5 milligrams, that I would have more success on a higher dose for maintenance. They quoted, and I'll find it and I'll link it in here because I screenshotted it, that actually people are typically having more success on 3 of the doses, and I can't remember off the top of my head what they are. That's knowing full well that I had said I haven't used this medication for nearly 3 months. So again, what I've done is, just to be really clear and fair, I have gone and emailed the companies. 2 of them offer a virtual, like a Teams consultation, and so I have requested those, and that will be involved in the, not necessarily the videos, but the information that I get from that will be involved in that other video. Now, I think it's really progressive and positive that a lot of these companies are supporting people on their maintenance journeys. Don't get me wrong. I think that's needed, because many people have already decided, rightly so for them, that they will need this medication forever. I don't know if I will need it forever. I'm just trying to go without it for now. And that hasn't been easy, as anybody that's watched these videos will know. So I think it is really progressive, and I think it is really positive that these companies are going to support people to manage these changes. How they will do that long term and be accurate, I don't know. Now, I'm not saying that individual actions that the companies need to be responsible for that, but they do need to be responsible generally about how they approach this in the safest way. Because as a teenager who had a weight issue and tried everything under the sun to lose weight and sometimes lost it, sometimes couldn't sustain it, if somebody had come to me at that point and said, here's a medication that you're going to inject weekly via a pen, so it's not even, like a needle, it's a pen, and showed me it and said, and this is also something that's prescribed on the NHS, I would have asked no more questions. I would have titrated up every single week, and I would have done what was ever necessary to make sure that I continued to get this medication. And that's a real worry, because actually, as I said, I've got teenage daughters and I know what it's like to be a teenage girl with an ED. I don't know what it's like to be a teenage boy with an ED. Probably no different, but I can only speak from personal experience. So I know that I would have gone to any means necessary to continue to acquire this medication. I know from watching TikTok and also speaking to somebody who told me about this medication, first of all, that they've managed to consistently get it and they would never have been eligible for it. And they do have body dysmorphia and they do have disordered eating, but they've continued to manage to get this medication. And so if they're doing it, and I can see, and I mean, obviously you can go on TikTok and you can buy this medication from people that are selling it. Never ever would do that. But I know if people are desperate enough and they're not able to get it the right way, that people do that. That's why these markets are so rampant. But you just never know what you're taking. It's just so risky. So on the one hand, it's a real mixed bag, because I do think it's brilliant that these companies have got a progressive, and they are asking for evidence. So one of the things that I noticed about the other companies that I've never used before is they are asking for different evidence. Back in May 2025, when I started using this medication, they just wanted a photo of me stood frontwards and a photo of me stood to the side. Now, they want things like, they want you doing a selfie, and then they want you to turn the camera to show you stepping on the scales, and they then want you to get off the scales and stand back on and use their camera to take a picture of your weight. So a sort of more bulletproof way to measure that you are the weight that you're saying you are. However, there are lots of ways to get around that, and that's what really concerns me. And I think whilst these companies are competing against each other to make money, because whilst their ethos is maybe around improving and supporting people to make changes, and that may be the case, that may be what they want to do, fundamentally they are money-making companies that all want to make money. So in one way or another, they're all in competition with each other, whether that's they've got lower prices, they're offering more of a sort of coaching service, their app's a bit shinier, whatever it is, they're in it to make money. And so they're going to compete. But I do think there needs to be a generalized response to making sure this medication doesn't get into the wrong hands, which these organizations absolutely should be responsible for. The easiest way I would say to do that would be, and again, it's not bulletproof, would be an online consultation, a follow-up online consultation every, let's say, 6 to 3 months, and making sure that this medication is in the right hands and being used appropriately. And there probably should be something for younger people, making sure that those prescribers are linking up with their GPs where it's appropriate. And the other thing that led me to think, the skeptical side of me, is that at the moment, I think there's something like 1.5 to 2 million people in the United Kingdom out of the 67 million people using these medications. So whether that's Ozempic, although that's not prescribed here, I don't think yet, for weight loss medication, Mounjaro or Wegovy in the pill form or the pen. At some point, most of the people that are on this medication are going to reach a maintenance weight. And if they don't have an underlying health condition, so let's say type 2 diabetes, like I don't have type 2 diabetes, I have polycystic ovary syndrome, but currently that isn't a reason that you would qualify to be prescribed this medication without the weight issue. At some point, all of these people mostly will reach a healthy weight, and there's not going to keep being a revolving door of millions of people that want this medication to the same level. We're probably seeing the highest wave of it now. And so what are these companies then going to do? Because they're making so much money, and Eli Lilly are making so much money from this, that I would imagine at some point they're all going to get to the point where, even if now they're saying we can't safely administer, if you're able to prove that you've lost the weight using the medication and you need a maintenance dose, they're probably all at some point going to offer this. I think it is really positive that they do. That's great. I just think there needs to be a tighter approach to it. It's still, in my opinion, there are a lot of loopholes and it's far too accessible. And I think it's fair to say that the onus is on the individual, but we've all been young once, and we all know, particularly if you know the desperate state you can get into of being a young person with a weight issue and how crippling that is. And I did that without the influence of social media. Like, the influence of social media now, you know, being overweight is treated in such, it's like up there with the worst things that you could possibly be. So all of those societal pressures, and you've got social media, and you've got filters left, right and center, people doctoring images of their body like well-known celebrities. Young people just, in a lot of respects, don't stand a chance. And if they're able to get their hands on this medication, a lot of them will, just as I would have done. And that is a real worry. And that's one that I don't think we can put the onus back onto the individual necessarily. I think there needs to be a much more condensed approach by these companies to make sure, as much as they possibly can, that that's not happening. So like I said, if you want to see that deep dive video, which I am going to make because I think it's a really interesting video and I think it's probably quite an important video that maybe isn't discussed enough, let me know, but it's going to take a little bit of time to put that together. So it's interesting. I think on the one side, it's really positive that there is this progressive approach to supporting people on this journey to maintain these changes, and obviously that will mean that it prevents things like yo-yo dieting or people possibly buying this medication somewhere that they shouldn't and then suffering the health consequences of that, or even if they are buying the actual medication but they're not using it responsibly. So there was a woman on this morning who her first injection was 10 milligrams. Of course, she was really, really unwell with that. Well, there needs to be a unified approach in my opinion. So let me know if you want to see that video. Let me know what your thoughts are. And equally, I know that there are people out there who have got companies and they've reached a sustainable weight and their company is supporting them on maintenance. Pop that in the comments so that anybody can have that information. And as I said, I will put all of this information together. I just want to make sure that it is fully accurate and that I've had my questions answered. It's positive and it's negative, as is everything. So I will see you in the next one, but have a great week. Bye.